I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, and this is a breaking news alert. We are learning that the Department of Justice has tapped one of our nation's top national security prosecutors and top terrorism prosecutor, someone named David Raskin, who's been tapped for the criminal investigation into Donald Trump's theft of the thousands of government records and top secret sensitive compartmented records, which we know Trump was hiding at Mar-a-Lago and potentially at other locations that the Department of Justice is currently still investigating. Now, bringing in somebody like a David Raskin into the fold is a sign that the Department of Justice is seriously considering a prosecution of Donald Trump. You do not bring in someone like David Raskin, who recently oversaw a case of an FBI analyst who pled guilty to keeping classified materials at their home. That conviction took place on October 13th. Raskin was also involved as a senior federal prosecutor in New York, involved in the investigation of the co-conspirators in the 9/11 terrorist attack. He was also involved in the investigation relating to the 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in East Africa. The recent conviction that I referenced of this FBI analyst, her name was Kendra Kingsbury, and she was in Missouri, where now faces up to 10 years in federal prison for keeping top secret records and other records at her home. But the point is, you don't bring in a David Raskin unless you are seriously considering to prosecute Donald Trump. And from prior reports, the Washington Post has reported, and it's been reported elsewhere as well, the Department of Justice, at least the individuals who can make that prosecutorial decision at the first layer, they then have to seek approvals up the ladder all the way to Merrick Garland on a case like this, have found that the thresholds of the criminal charges have all been met. The mens rea, the mental state, the actus reus, all of the elements for the crimes have been established for the crimes that they know of so far. They are still investigating whether Donald Trump is still concealing records at other properties like Trump Tower, like Bedminster, and perhaps other properties and other locations where he may be hiding records. But this definitely represents an escalation in the Department of Justice's investigation and increasing significantly, I can't stress this enough, significantly the likelihood that we will see a prosecution of Donald Trump in connection with his theft of these government records. Now, just to remind you, there is a criminal grand jury in Washington, D.C. that is investigating Donald Trump's criminal conduct. We know from the search warrant that was signed by Judge Reinhart in the Southern District of Florida, the magistrate judge. He signed it on August 5th. It was executed on August 8th. The crimes being investigated that we know of, which were mentioned in the search warrant, violations of the Espionage Act, obstruction and concealment and mutilation of records. The obstruction count alone has a minimum of 20 years in prison for each obstruction count, and it is likely, from what we know, that Trump engaged in multiple acts of obstruction. And the Espionage Act and the concealment and mutilation also carry very stiff multi-year prison sentences as well. Additional information that we've learned, Kash Patel on October 13th spoke before the grand jury impaneled in Washington, D.C., investigating Donald Trump's criminality and the theft of these records. We have learned that Kash Patel pled the fifth when he spoke with the grand jury in Washington, D.C. Kash Patel, in interviews to radical right extremist papers and digital papers, and he spoke to Breitbart and digital media and all these groups, he bragged. He said, I think back in May 5th, he talked to Breitbart and he said, I was there when Trump declassified these records. He took these records, but then he declassified these records. And what were they about? Oh, they were about Russia and other stuff about our national security that Trump declassified. So, one, I should mention this too, declassification has nothing to do with the crimes being charged. You can't steal government records, top secret records, and then obstruct an investigation also. Those are crimes, regardless of the classification status. It should also be mentioned that when you declassify things, there's a record and a log of a declassification. You don't get to telepathically declassify things because you have to let the relevant agencies know that you are declassifying the information, because sources and methods can be burned and Americans can die if you just negligently declassify records. And Trump claiming he telepathically declassified records, in many ways, it makes it worse if he even claims he telepathically declassified the records and went outside of the program. But nonetheless, classification status is not an element of any of the crimes. But when Kash Patel was asked these questions, oh, this is what you told Breitbart. This is what, oh, you go on all of your radical social media and you do that little KA money sign H instead of the S. Okay, you think that's cute? You think that's funny? Answer the questions in front of the grand jury. And what does Kash Patel do? I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. So now the Department of Justice is looking into ways to compel that testimony, and they're considering whether offering a cooperation agreement, a limited grant of immunity on these specific issues of these stolen documents. They are looking into that. They also have this valet, the guy who would give Trump the Pepsis, his Diet Cokes, or whatever the hell he drank at the White House, who it was also his valet, who then worked with him at Mar-a-Lago. This individual was caught on camera moving records from the storage room to other places in Mar-a-Lago after the grand jury issued a subpoena to Donald Trump for the records when they realized that he still had additional records stolen and that he was lying to them. The grand jury's also spoken to Christina Bobb, Trump's lawyer, who claims that she's just a custodian of records in connection with the documents, but she signed a declaration to the FBI saying she gave the FBI a red weld on June 3rd and said, here you go. Here's everything. There was no objections. They didn't assert executive privilege, attorney-client privilege. They didn't assert objections. They said, here are the documents in a red well, sealed red well, some top secret records. But this is all we got. We got nothing more. And they turned it over to the top counterintelligence official of the DOJ, and they lied to him. It was a false declaration. They said, upon a diligent search based on what we've been told, these are all the records. There's no more. Of course, we know that's false. On August 8th, the Department of Justice had to execute a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago because they kept on being lied to by Trump and these lawyers. And they found these records right away in the storage room in Trump's office. 11,000 documents. 11,000 documents they got on August 8th, including 203 top secret classified records, which we're learning are nuclear secrets. Documents about Iran's missile program, documents about Chinese military weapons, China's military and weapons facilities. Real top secret stuff that if our sources and methods are burned, Americans get killed. You can get killed. Our community can get killed. Our country, people can get killed over. Wars can be started over this. This is not a freaking joke. The way Donald Trump treats it, this is not a freaking game. This is life or death stuff. You don't steal top secret classified records. And the Department of Justice isn't treating it. The Department of Justice is escalating this. And I've predicted, I genuinely believe here, Donald Trump is going to be prosecuted for obstruction, for the theft of these records. And we're only scratching the surface of what was he doing with the records. I think the Department of Justice knows what he was doing with the records. We know how Donald Trump is transactional with everything he does. He was not just keeping these records as a mere trophy. He was taking these records to blackmail our country. He was taking these records to further his business interests. He was taking these records to keep power. He was keeping these records for nefarious reasons that could result in the death of Americans, tens of thousands and millions of Americans, placing all of our life in peril. And the Department of Justice, by bringing in this veteran prosecutor, David Raskin, knows that. I believe they're prepared to prosecute Donald Trump on this. I believe that every element has been established in the crime. Donald Trump was personally involved in telling people to lie to the Department of Justice about the records. Donald Trump was involved in cherry-picking which records he wanted to return after he was caught having the records. He was telling the lawyers what they had to say and what they shouldn't say to obstruct the Department of Justice's investigation. The case I told you about out of Missouri, the case that David Raskin recently prosecuted where there was a guilty plea of this FBI analyst. I mean, of course she wasn't the president, but there's far stronger evidence here, a plethora of evidence here against Trump. Far more evidence than in this case against Kendra Kingsbury, who on October 13th pled guilty to keeping national defense documents in her home. Think about it. Think about it. No one is above the law. It's one of the most basic principles of our country. A president is but a temporary steward of that office. We don't have kings here. We don't have dictators here. The fact that we have a cult leader and a Republican Party that's become a cult, that in response to this real serious stuff, their response is, we need to abolish the Espionage Act. There shouldn't be a law against espionage. I'm not joking. That's what they're saying. That's what Republicans are saying. The Republicans are saying that we need to defund the FBI or abolish the FBI. The FBI shouldn't exist. Why? Because they executed a valid search warrant in Mar-a-Lago. That's why the FBI shouldn't exist. That's what they believe. To protect their cult. Why should it be a Democrat or a Republican view? It should be easy to say you can't steal nuclear secrets. You can't steal top secret records. You can't place our nation in peril like that. In the past, the nation would come together over certain things and say, before this era of MAGA and QAnon and Trump and Tea Party radicalization, we'd come together and we'd say, look, that is bad. That needs to be prosecuted. That should be universally condemned. There is an objective reality, an objective truth. And now there isn't. There is the objective truth, but there's only one political party in the Democrats that address the objective truth, and then you have the Republicans that gaslight, that live in an alternative reality and want that QAnon, fascistic, Raqqa-like where ISIS was, like Raqqa-like vision to be America. And the question is, where are we? Where do we stand? And it's just so important right now that we truly stand for law and order, not as a catchphrase to gaslight the real meaning of law and order, the real meaning of our Constitution, the real meaning of those things. And I'm glad that we have David Raskin on this case. We will keep you posted. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button right now. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. Please hit the subscribe button right now. In addition, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. There are a number of exclusive membership packages there and benefits. Check it out. Exclusive merch, exclusive podcasts, exclusive Q&As, exclusive, I think I said it, exclusive podcasts. You could become a honorary producer of the podcast and your name appears at the end of it. But most importantly, we're not funded by millionaires or billionaires. We really depend on you and your generosity to help grow this network. So please, your generosity is appreciated. If you can, no worries if you can't. Share these videos, but if you can, join us at our Patreon website. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.